We are going to dive into the fun and exciting world of logistics and fulfillment and shipping. And I know that may sound boring, but my guest today is going to make it fun. And we want to help empower you so that it's not so scary. So stay tuned. Welcome to Your Food Business Success. This podcast is for early stage entrepreneurs in the packaged food industry ready to finally turn that delicious idea into reality. I'm your host, Sari Kimbell. I have guided hundreds of food brand founders to success as an industry expert and business coach, and it's gotta be fun. In this podcast, I share with you mindset tools to become a true entrepreneur and run your business like a boss. Interviews with industry experts to help you understand the business you are actually in, and food founder journeys so you can learn what worked and didn't work and not feel so alone in your own journey. Now let's jump in. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Really excited to have you here. And today's guest is amazing. I'm really excited to welcome Caitlin Wilson of Full Good Fulfillment. So welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you.
And we were on a call. We're part of a women's networking group in CPG. And
Yeah.
we met actually a while ago and had lunch. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. Everybody needs
Oh,
to know her in this
thanks,
industry.
Sari.
And yeah, you're just an all-around badass in CPG. And then you were talking about 5PL, and I was like, okay, we got to have her on the
Yeah.
podcast. We haven't ever really talked about logistics and all of that stuff. So we're going to get into that. But
Fun.
first, you have an incredible background in CPG. And so I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your background and who you are.
Yeah, so I actually come from the farming world, the fresh produce space. I'm fifth generation of a big farming family on the West Coast. And I worked in the produce world in kind of the transportation support space for some huge retailers that we worked with for a long time, and it was really fun working in the family business. And then I kind of saw a transition and to just took the opportunity to kind of step away from the family business. Still obviously very heavily involved. From like an emotional standpoint, it's still a really cool thing to be a part of. And my husband got a cool opportunity to come out to Denver. And of course, it was right around COVID. And so we came out to Denver, and, my husband and I met in college. I went to Colorado State, initially went to Boulder for 2 years, couldn't hang. So I transferred to Colorado State, and was a little bit, it was a better fit for me being an ag kid, up there. And so I met my husband at school, and anyway, really fun, kind of story there. But yeah, he got an opportunity to come back to Denver. And so we walked through the door, we came back to Denver. And at that point in time, we had just had our daughter, our youngest. And I just, didn't really know what was in the cards for me, but was just enjoying being a mom and taking some time to kind of reset. And during that period of time, a colleague was starting a dog food company, a fresh frozen dog food company. And was like, God, I really need help just bringing this product to market. And it was a fun, kind of work from home part-time kind of thing. And so, but with Farmer's Dog and with all these other kind of big fresh frozen companies out there, it was definitely like an uphill battle. But through that, I really realized how horrible, and not horrible, but really I'd say poor communication and kind of just not great support wise, the logistics spaces for CPG brands. And so kind of just started by supporting our own brand, right? And kind of after exploring a bunch of fulfillment companies and logistics groups, just really realized wow, there's an opportunity here to kind of flip the script. And so what started with just our own brand, it was word of mouth and through our co-manufacturer at the time that we took on our initial few kind of brands as clients. And now, we went from beta testing the business, if you will. And then now we're in like a massive warehouse, and so it's just kind of, and we service a lot. We're over like 50 brands that we're helping right now, and it's
Wow.
really fun. So that's kind of the whole story of what, what where Full Good came from. Full Good is named after my kids, Ford and Georgia. So I always like sharing that. It's, oh yeah, but as far as like all the PLs are concerned, it's definitely like, always a topic of conversation. So I'm happy to
Yeah.
kind of dive in and share a little bit more about it. So
Well, first of all, I have to say go Rams because I'm also
yeah, go
a
Rams.
CSU grad.
Yeah.
And fun fact, I actually like it's so funny how we never met, but I
Yeah. We
worked with
never met
your husband at a real estate development like ages ago.
years
And
ago. Right. Right. Multiple chapters ago, if you
I
will. Yeah.
know. And then we had a mutual friend and like was talking about this
Yeah.
dog food company and this amazing
Yes.
woman that was helping with it. And it's like, oh wow,
So
here we are.
fun. I know. I know. I love that, like how that works, especially in the CPG space. Like it's such a small world and so many amazing people and just the networks, the places that I've met people and whatnot. Everyone's so positive and yeah, but anyway, it's been fun being a part of your journey as well, Sari. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been, yeah, I've definitely referred some clients your way when
yes.
we have, yeah, so it's so cool to see you grow along with the clients as well. And it's a
Yes,
fun
totally.
journey. So for people who are like, what, what are the PLs? Like, so typically we
Yeah.
hear of what's called a 3PL. So can you kind of
Mhm.
tell us what that is? And
Yeah, well,
we
you
can talk
know
about
what?
when you want to use it.
I'll actually start at like what is a 1 PL if you want and kind of work
Perfect.
all the way up. Okay. So when you're referring to PLs, you're just referring to logistics. It's for, third party logistics is a 3PL, right? So there's actually something called a 1PL, and a 1PL is like when you quite literally are doing it all yourself. So you're manufacturing, you're shipping, you're doing everything in-house by yourself. And a lot of the brands, I'm sure that, a lot of the brands that you work with and a
Sure.
lot of the brands that we kind of step in to help, they start out as a 1PL, right? So a lot of listeners are probably currently 1PLs.
Yeah.
And then a 2PL is kind of when you still keep some things, but you're maybe just searching out for transportation help or something like that. So that's like a 2PL. And that's really kind of like not very common. Whereas a 3PL is like the most common term that you hear. And that is when it's like warehousing, transportation help, kind of like a lot of things all in one. A lot of 3PLs, though, people call themselves a 3PL, but they may not be a warehouse. They may be like a freight broker, or they may be, a like contractor that just helps with like one or two things.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny because they all call themselves like 3PLs. A lot of fulfillment companies classify as a 3PL. We certainly do, right? But I like to say that we're either a 4PL or a 5PL. 5PL is kind of a newer term. And what that means is that it's just kind of providing further logistics help. So there are some brands that we work with that we still want to have a lot of control, and they're really good at like knowing when to replenish their product, knowing when to order more, kind of knowing when to step in operationally and like only let us handle the 3PL aspect, which is just the logistics. And then we've worked with some brands recently that are like, you know what? You guys know what you're doing here. You see our products. Like, can you help us with kind of replenishment of inventory and really identifying when to reorder? And we even have some clients that are like, yeah, do you mind just like reaching out directly and like helping me with my reorders and just taking a lot more off of people's plates? Some additional services like might include things like replying to clients on like a hello ad email, things that are like to that nature. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what classifies like more like a 5PL. So, I mean, all intents and purposes, like we're still a 3PL, but we like to say that we're trying to inch our way towards more of a 5PL, allowing these brands to either not have to hire an operations person or a logistics specialist in house and like just really work with us instead. Like we want to just be on the same team as the brands that we work with. So
Right.
yeah, so that's kind of like a full, kind of a long-winded but full explanation, if you will.
I love that. That's a really
Mhm.
great add-on because yeah, as brands start to grow, they need those extra support. So you're helping brands to be able to scale
Yes.
and be
Yes.
more efficient with the services. And
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
As a fulfillment partner, I guess, we get the question a lot is like, most people do start out as 1PLs and they're doing
Yeah.
all the things. Maybe they have a co-packer, right? But
Mhm.
certainly, I know your business will help with like the logistics of
Yeah.
people they kind of forget that like, okay, a co-packer makes it and then the product has to go somewhere.
Exactly. We work with like I mean, really all manufacturers. A lot of them will be like, oh, yeah, no, we could handle the logistics for you. And then that's kind of it. Like they'll just ship it to wherever it needs to go. And then some are like, no, 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 like you got to do that yourself. And that can
Yeah.
be very overwhelming for brands, right? And that is something that's kind of like, where do I even start? And we've helped kind of guide brands through the process. Like it's not as scary. It's kind of like for me, I used to be very scared of numbers, right? I'm not as much anymore because I've worked with some amazing fractional CFOs and right. But it's like, let's not be scared of logistics. Like let's empower you as
Yeah.
a brand founder to really understand logistics, and then we can partner with you as well. So and yeah, after you manufacture your product, it has to go somewhere. Generally co-manufacturers are not going to do all the fulfillment and all the work as well. Some
Yeah.
might. So it's kind of like where to go next.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. I've seen a few, but and sometimes they will store your product for you, but they'll charge you for it. And so,
Mhm.
but most of the time, like they're a manufacturer and then they want you to get your stuff out of there because they need to make room for
Yes,
manufacturing the next person. So,
totally.
um, just we're getting into the details of this, but I think it'll be really helpful. So, some people might be like, okay, well, do I just schedule UPS? But what we're dealing with here is like probably pallets if you're at a co-manufacturer. And so what kind of freight options do people have with that?
Yeah, so it's so interesting. And we've worked with brands that are just, like I said earlier, just getting started, right? Or kind of transitioning from like being at a farmer's market even to like,
Yeah.
okay, wow, I've really proven my model. I'm ready to, get online now, or I'm ready to get into major retailers now, even, local retailers. And how do I do that? And so I think, the first step is, yeah, obviously co-manufacturing. And if you're not already, in with a co-manufacturer, like finding a great one, right? And then it's like, yes, the next steps are literally figuring out your logistics. Like, how are you going to either go from the co-manufacturer to your own facility or to a facility like ours? And yeah, so it's lately, I've seen some very interesting things happening in the freight world. One of which is the development of it's like the Uber Freight of the world. And I'm actually like very good friends with some awesome people at Uber Freight. And I was actually like a big part of when Uber Freight first got started. They wanted to get into the produce space and kind of letting, the exploration of that happen at our facility in California, my family's facility in California. And that was a really fun project. So it's so funny because when I started this business, I'm like, oh wow, so Uber Freight's still around. Like that, this is still a thing. And
Wow.
yeah, and so it's like quite literally like an app that you can just go on and like as a brand, develop, kind of, okay, well, I need a pallet and I need to move here. The only bummer with things like Uber Freight, they're getting better and better at it every single day as a business, but the only bummer is that if you have a product that is like refrigerated or frozen, or like you have a time restriction, it's tough right now with LTL being less than a truckload is what LTL stands for. And generally, if you're a startup brand, you're only producing, let's call it 4 or 5 pallets at a time, um, going with options like that, right? So we
Mhm.
have a bunch of carriers that we trust and that we partner with. That insure their pallets, right? They insure their trucks, and if anything were to ever happen, like they you state how much the product costs you, and right, you can go through that whole process. And so those are the types of carrier groups that we like to partner with.
Yeah.
And then we also, if it's a co-manufacturer that's in the Denver area, we've got a ton of local like kind of hotshot guys that we partner with and that we work like exclusively with for fresh, frozen, and refrigerated. So
Yeah. I think I used to work for a farm up in
yes,
Wellington, and
yes.
I remember the woman that would sit at the front desk. She was a fireball, but and she would like be on the phone with truckers and dealing with bills of lading
Yes.
and to pick up times, and it was insane because I mean we had like semis coming in there,
Oh
but
yeah.
like it's really important, especially if you have a refrigerated product and
Team
you have a chain of
handles
custody, right?
totally. And that's where, like, that gal, I mean, that was back then, and nothing has really changed in the freight world. It's still very much like long-handed. There's obviously a lot of technology now, but that assists, but you still need printed out bill of ladings.
Yeah, it's a
You
little
still
old
need that
school.
chain of custody has to still, yeah. And while I think that there are like a lot of evolutions happening within the transportation space, I think there will always kind of be that a little bit old school part of it. And, it's not going anywhere. And so it's just a matter of kind of learning, like, what are the practices, partnering with groups like ourselves. It's just like we want to help you understand it, but then like let us just handle it as well, type of
Yeah.
thing. So
That's definitely an
yeah,
area of just be like
yes,
somebody who knows what they're doing. Yes. I only need to know the high level.
yes.
So the product, you get the product so you can go to yourself and then you're the fulfillment, the 1PL.
Yep.
Or how do I know when it's time, as a brand, if I'm been a 1PL, like when do you typically see, encourage brands that you meet with to be like, now you're ready?
Yeah, we were just having this conversation the other day with a new brand out of Boulder. And what I love the most about this business is getting on these calls with these brands and hearing their stories first, right? And really truly understanding where they are and the life cycle of their brand. And there's many, many times that I say to them, listen, you're just not ready for us yet. But I do try to provide like that level of advice, like, hey, why don't you try this or try this? And I'm always happy to do that. And, to talk to brands kind of through the life cycle and get them ready for us. We generally say, so we have a monthly minimum, and our monthly minimums pretty low compared to when I was shopping out monthly minimums for my own dog food brand. And so if you can't hit your monthly minimum with us, which includes everything like storage, shipping label, cost of the cartons, if we're going to, we have our own boxes here. So like you don't have to come to us with boxes, tape, right? All the things like that's all kind of included in being a client of ours. If you hit a certain point and you exceed that monthly minimum already doing it yourself, or like you're launching a new brand and you're like, wow, I've already got a ton of pre-sales, like to the tune of like two or 300, right? It's like, yeah, you're probably going to be ready for us.
Mhm.
So if you're doing 10 orders a week, like you're not quite there, right? But I'm happy to share with you kind of how to get there, in the logistics space, and maybe how we could provide any level of like guidance. We're happy to do that. We're actually coming out in Q1 with like an education piece. I don't know quite, we're working on the framework still, but pretty
Oh,
exciting.
nice.
There's just so many brands, right, that like are kind of scared, and I don't want it to be a scary thing. I don't
Yeah.
want logistics and fulfillment to be like, I don't know how to do this. I want to empower brands, and while, I want them to work with us. I do want to provide like some level of education and training because it's just not out there. Like it is like digging, through a haystack to find something, and it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, it is this very like cloaked
It's
world.
bizarre.
Like
Yeah.
you can't find stuff readily online and
Mm-hmm,
there's a
mm-hmm.
lot of like insider.
Yeah, it's like a lot of insider information. And I'll be frank, like that was a lot of the things when I was looking at fulfillment companies as a brand owner. I was like really turned off. I was like, why is there it's like the man behind the curtain situation here. I'm like, it doesn't need to be like this. And, receiving our first invoice with that brand, we were like, what? Like they didn't tell us this. And then we even read through the contract and we're like, wow, this wording is super, super sketchy. And,
Mhm.
again, always read contracts before you sign them. And I'm a big believer of that. But there's just a lot of kind of that happening in this
Yeah.
world that we're trying to just break it down. We're trying to
Yeah, be
just
really
really simplify
transparent.
it, really be transparent. Yeah. And just provide that guidance. There's no secret what my margins are on on doing this for you. Like I want you to know what that is.
And not be hit with a whole bunch of these crazy
Fees.
charges at the end.
Hmm.
Yeah, really know what you're
Yeah.
getting into because it's got to
Yeah.
make sense. I mean, ultimately it's time and money, right? It's always this equation as a founder. And sometimes, I do have people that are like, I'm under the minimums, but I just do not have time to do with this.
Yeah.
And I work it into my business model. And it's like, okay, great.
Yeah, and there are, and you know what? We've recently had a few brands that have moved out and we helped them get to a place where we're like, okay, awesome. So we helped you actually like you launched your product, we helped you kind of get going, and then you purchased your own facility and are actually manufacturing on your and for freight doing your freight and fulfillment in-house. Like that's also a really cool business model too, right?
Yeah.
And getting back to that 1PL model. And sometimes it's every single situation's different. And so it's just really, like I said, the first call I like to have with people, understanding where they are in the brand cycle and letting them know like, yes, let's insert ourselves now, or call me in 6 months and do X, Y, and Z, and friend me on LinkedIn and stay in touch. Like,
Right.
and I'll be rooting for you because I want you to move in. And the other thing too is like it's like let's obviously I want to grow my business to be huge, but let's still humanize this, and not make it so crazy. Yeah. So
I
I like
love
to
it.
kind of provide that community aspect, with
Yeah.
these brands and encourage them. Yeah. Oh my gosh, is that what you want to do? You want to move this all in house? Okay, great. Let's get you there. Like, let
Right.
me help you. Here is our contact for our box guy. Here is our, insulation guy. Here, oh, you need dry ice? Call these two companies, get rates from them.
Right.
By all means. And there's a lot of companies that are like, I do not ever want to have my own warehouse. I do not. And they want to build it up, go for Series A, all those things too. Like we can help those brands too.
Yeah, you know your stuff in this world. So you're such a great connection, and I love
Thank
that you're so
you.
generous with your time. So I do want to ask, because we're talking about shipping, and I know it can be so tough for brands dealing with the shipping factor, right? And like when we're up against Amazon and Prime and all these
Yes.
things, and yeah, I actually just had a brand founder yesterday in our group saying, I dropped all these packages off at the post office and they're lost in transit, like no tracking number, and it's the holidays, and customers are like, don't like paying for shipping and all of that.
Right.
But like, what is the deal with shipping? Like, why is it so expensive? It feels
Yeah.
expensive, right? But maybe
Yeah.
just like pull the curtain back a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not cheaper for us. Like even with volume, I mean, I may be saving like 10-15%. Like it's outrageous. It is, and I share those savings with our clients, right? Like where we're making money is the cost of fulfillment, the cost of my labor. And we are a labor business. But yeah, so I always advise brands to consider, especially with like shipping charges, to consider like that, and maybe working with people like you on this, but where can you be to then offer the free shipping, right? So
Yeah.
to encourage the high checkouts. So that's one thing, that's kind of one model that I'll like help people work through. I'm happy to like provide guidance with financial modeling and stuff like that, but I am not an expert when it comes to finance. So I always like kind of preface that with clients. But from a consulting perspective or just guidance perspective on an hourly basis, like I do it all the time. So that's kind of one approach, right? Like is option one is like, how can we get you to a place where your checkouts are high, and what does that look like to your cost, to your true cost per unit? And then, factoring in the cost of fulfillment, the cost of the box, like the cost of your storage, right? And understanding like, okay, well, you've got 5 pallets here with me, but if the product doesn't move
Yeah.
for 6 months, like I want you to move your product. I want your 5 pallets to be in and out of here. And let's just maintain a 5 pallet space for you, and let's just keep moving on that. And then option two is kind of, okay, let's look at the cost of fulfillment. Let's look at the cost of a corrugate. If you're buying corrugate from me, if you don't own it yourself, and then let's look at your average storage costs, your overhead, and then let's try to break that down by a like per unit based on the amount of orders that you have that on an average month. So if you're at like 100 orders a month, let's call it 50 orders a week or 25 orders a week. Great. Let's like model out what a 9.99 looks like. Let's
Mhm.
7.99. Let's see what these look like. If you're a frozen product or a refrigerated product that has to get there, in 1 to 2 business days, a totally different story. So let's put them in like option 3 category. But, and that is, listen, as a consumer, I'm always going to expect to pay some level of shipping, knowing, generally speaking, consumers must know there's got to be dry ice involved. There's got to be ice packs, things like that involved, right?
Right.
So I always encourage, okay, let's do like a flat rate trial, and let's see what it looks like. Within Colorado, it's this cost, within this zone, it's this cost. And then, if you want to even look at your shipping as like a profit center or trying to become a profit center, those are discussions that we could have, right? And kind of looking at it like, yes, they're paying for shipping, but can I make $1 on all of that, right? Can it all add up, and can I still make $1 per order?
Maybe.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
and so kind of like working through that modeling, we love to help clients with that. We also have some clients who are like, nope, this is what I do, and that's totally fine too. I just want to be a resource if I can give you one, give you any level of advice. So another like kind of interesting concept, if you're going, from direct to consumer to like B2B or wholesale, is the concept of like delivered sales, right? And not just relying on KeHE or Unify to come and pick it up for you, because like, again, always read your contract, but in the fine print, like they're making some good money on the freight, right?
Yeah.
And that is going to affect your bottom line. And is your brand even ready for that? Or should you explore a delivered model where you're physically dropping it off using an LTL service and your pricing reflects that and you add a few cents per unit, you know?
Right.
So all of those kind of discussions I love having with brands. I'm a freight dork, so I don't know.
I love that. Yeah, I have a pricing for profit, like whole
Yeah.
spreadsheet that
Yeah,
is
I
at least a
love
high
love that.
level to kind of start working in all those costs, but you probably get even deeper in the weeds. And yeah, I mean, I love it that you guys do the frozen and refrigeration, which can be really challenging to find a good
Yeah.
partner in that space. I know that's why you started because you were
Yes.
refrigerated
Yeah, we started
product.
with the hardest product, frozen.
Yeah, and it needs all these things. And I know you worked with some of my clients who have refrigerated, frozen stuff. And one of the words that I learned from you, well, through a client, was the word kitting, right? Am I
Yeah,
saying that right?
kidding.
Yeah. So what is that? Just so pe if people hear that from a
Yeah. So kidding is like a term. I mean, again, I kind of encapsulate a lot of things in a kidding. But anytime that you're bundling something or providing, like one SKU is 3 items, or things like that, we call that kidding, right? And a
okay.
lot of times we'll kit out or we'll prep out in advance. So like if you're one of those that has 500 orders a day, like I'm going to kit for you the night before, right? To be ready to go. And if you hit your numbers, great. And if you don't, we've got some extra kits left over for the next day. Kitting also comes into play when you're dealing with Amazon, because from, an FBA perspective, fulfilled by Amazon perspective, they always sell things by the unit, and the unit usually is classified as multiple items. And
Mhm.
so we do a lot of kitting when it comes to Amazon. So, one of my clients has like 6 items that must be placed into a box and then sealed a certain way. And then, a label is placed on top, on the side, and on the bottom, right? So that's called kitting. You need to know all this as a brand, right? Like, let me help you understand what it takes for your product to get into these places in a specific way. We have a awesome client that's been with us for years, that, or from the beginning really, that is just getting into some new retailers, and it's great. They send me the 97-page like document that they get from these retailers that says like, essentially, here is how your product has to arrive to us. And these retailers make it so that if your product does not arrive that way, you'll get chargebacks, right? And it's all about reading the fine print, and it's all about really going through every single step and every single part of the document. I've got a few employees, a few members of our team on the client services side that are like really good at details. And as far as I'm concerned, like supporting a brand, really all that you need to know is how to read through details. I
Yeah.
mean, that is now how it is. So all they want to do is kind of like oh, they missed this sticker. Great, let's charge them back. It's any opportunity that they can get to make, to kind of make a profit. So
Yeah.
it's all those little details that,
It's really unfortunate in this
it is
industry
unfortunate.
that's the way it is. But I also understand from like a high level, I mean, these are warehouses and
Yeah.
distributors that are receiving thousands and thousands
Yes.
of products and so they need it to be a certain way. And so if details, because I know a lot of my folks are like, I make the most amazing thing and I'm really creative and like when you start getting into distribution or retailers or Amazon or things like that, like it is so specific and you got to get it right. Otherwise, that shipment might be coming back or you're getting
Yeah.
chargebacks or, whatever, right? It doesn't get checked in correctly. And
Yeah.
I mean, I remember at Whole Foods, having to send product out back, having to refuse
Yeah.
product that was out of temp or didn't have the right labels and the right shipping stuff. And it's just heartbreaking. But I think finding a good partner like yourself to help walk you through that, because if you're not a detail person, which I'm not always either, like go find people who are and are
Right, right. And a lot of these
passionate
founders,
about it.
yeah, and a lot of founders like I'm realizing more and more, right? Like while I loved being a part of the dog food company from the, from the perspective from the ops even, I wasn't like cut out to own my own brand, right? Like, and I realized I was like, oh my God, well, and I was on a team there too, but I thought forever and ever like, oh, this would be so fun to have my own brand. And it's like, no, I want to support brands because
Mhm.
I'm decent, like our team's pretty good at doing the support side, right?
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's interesting, back to like kind of like all the nuances, like even down to the details of like kind of knowing like insider information. Like I know right now at Walmart, or sorry, at Amazon, it's taking 3 months to check in pallets. A lot of brands don't know that. Like I have a brand that's just now getting started on Amazon, and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm like, it's December 5th. Like it's like probably the worst time to start like a storefront on Amazon. But okay, you
Yeah.
want to get some product in for FBA, sounds good. I'm like, let's make sure it goes UPS parcel because that has a better chance of getting checked in before the new year than a pallet will. And while
Mhm.
she wants everything in her power, she wants to do pallets. I'm like, listen, it's not going to work out well for you. So, and sure enough, we'll get her accepted. It's going to be fine because she's going to ship a ton of parcels in. And so it's also just kind of looking like, what is that going to cost you as a business and making that decision like is this channel where you should be going after you're looking at all the costs associated with it, including the freight and logistics?
Well, and I think it's good to think about, to remember that 'cause a lot of times we think of 3PLs and we just think of like direct to consumer, right?
Right,
Filling your Shopify store
right.
and doing that fulfillment. But, and I don't know if this is typical of other 3PLs, but I do love that you guys are kind of multidisciplinary, if you will, that,
Yeah,
like you said, the Amazon, like you could ship a pallet from your co-packer and then you guys build the kits and then you put them in the boxes and ship them to Amazon and with all the correct labels and everything.
right, right.
Or, and I know like certain grocery stores like Sprouts, I believe, I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure Sprouts will like accept, UPS deliveries and things
Yes,
like that too. So, you can decide like, well, I actually don't want to go with a distributor. I just want to ship. And so you guys can also help with the logistics of like getting it to the distributor
exactly.
as
I mean,
well.
even the major retailers, like it's just, again, it's just about reading the fine print. Like Target accepts UPS. So it's just kind of knowing like the ability to really read the fine print, ask the right questions from all these buyers
Yeah.
and wade through the BS and just kind of figure out what's going to be best for my brand. Is it going to be always parcel, always LTL? Like, am I going to want to get on a cadence? I've got one client that I'm helping, it's a yogurt brand, really fun yogurt brand. And, they were looking at their KE numbers and they're like, God, my numbers are just the check-in rate versus, right? Like all of those percentages, right? On all these reports that they provide you with every month that are really, really helpful, by the way. And everyone should be diving into that information. And you and I have a lot of mutual friends that could help with that service as well, right?
Yeah.
But just looking at things from like a holistic perspective and thinking like, well, shoot, why don't we throw a tracker on a pallet? Let's throw a GPS tracker that has a temp tail and a GPS feature. And we don't need to tell KE that we're doing this. Let's just do it because you own that product. and let's see how quickly it gets arrived at KeHE. And if they're not doing a good enough job, great. And again, I've got tons of friends at KeHE too. So, and they're the first ones to say how busy they are, right? We're all busy. We're all growing, right? The food business is just booming right now, but let's help as a brand instead of just constantly complaining and constantly like, God, why is this happening to me? It's let's come up with a solution. Let's trial a few things, let's look at like, so what we're doing there is we're going to throw a temp tail or a tracker on these pallets and see if it arrives when they're telling us it's arriving.
Mhm.
Right. And, and if we need to tell the buyer, hey, listen, we're doing this, like, we're not going to be shady about it. We're going to tell you this is
Yeah.
what we're doing for our brand. We want to improve our numbers. So we're doing a cool approach. We're trying something new. So it's just, those types of kind of solutions, and coming from the produce world, right? Like those trackers, those temp tails were required on every load. And, so that's like the world I come from, is kind of this really coming from a stringent background, being fresh produce with the shortest shelf life of anything in the grocery store. It's fun to kind of like think of old tips and tricks, right? And bring them to this space.
How can people be like they're ready? They're like, I'm ready to go and start working with a 3PL or some kind
Yeah.
of fulfillment logistics service. What do you guys look for in to build a great partnership? And what can people be thinking about as they, come on board and like they want to be a good partner? Because what I'm hearing is like you want to be really great partners with your
Yeah.
customers and brands and
Yeah.
like everybody succeed.
Yeah. So we have a number of questions. It's so funny because a lot of these 3PLs, and again, this is kind of something I'm trying to flip in the industry too. And not every 3PL is like this. So this is a generalized statement to not include everyone. But generally, it's like you can go to websites and you can see all their pricing, and you could even type in like, I've got 5 pallets, how much is it going to cost? Or I've got this, and this, right? And that's great. And that'll give you like kind of a general overview idea of like what the industry pricing standard is. And quite frankly, we're priced at the industry standard, right? We can't be priced any higher because we would not be in business. It's just, it's a competitive space. But really thinking through, like, we ask the questions like, what sales channels are you currently in? Where do you see yourself going? Right. So, oh, you don't have Fair yet. You want to get onto Fair? Great. Um, are you interested in Amazon? Oh, okay. You're already working with Luke Tierney or one of these other, right? Great. Awesome. So just kind of answering all the questions about the profile of their brand, having a true understanding of their volume. Some brand founders like think they have an idea, and then, they move in, and we're like, well, shoot, you're doing a lot better than you told us you were, volume wise. So really having a good idea of where you are with volume. And again, this might sound really, really basic, but your business could change day to day, especially during Q4, or Q1 to Q4, right? And having an idea of your landscape. So that's kind of the first thing that we like to go over. And then the second part is, how do you like your product shipped? If you're a dry good, are you currently just kind of using like Shopify to check out and buy labels from Shopify? Like, are you paying attention? Are you doing mostly USPS? Are you doing UPS, FedEx? Like, do you have a preferred carrier partner? So that question mark we like to ask, right? And then what is your volume? What is your projected volume for the year? Do you have any big goals and aspirations and dreams that we need to know about, right? Or did you get accepted as a new product in Walmart? Did you like what's happening? And so we ask these questions not to be super nosy, but to like have an understanding of kind of where you are and where you're going so that we're ready.
Right.
And it's interesting because a lot of brands, when we ask these questions, they kind of, I'm like, they kind of look at themselves and say like, why are we having this conversation? And once I explain it and kind of break down that barrier of like, we are more than a 3PL, like we want to be there for you. So if you're at 5 pallets but you anticipate being at 70 pallets of storage, I need to know. I want to know, and I want to help you get there. and it really is about being strategic in this space and having that understanding. Great, you're here, but someday you're going to have a carrier on a contract. Like, lovely, like, let's start having those conversations now. Oh, you manufacture in Denver and in the Southeast? Awesome. Let me do a cost analysis. Like, let's play with some numbers. Let's split your Shopify between two locations. Just things like that, right? Where it's thinking big picture, and really trying to like provide a value to the brands that they're not going to maybe see at other 3PLs. So, and again, do we charge enough? Maybe not. I don't know, but
You
I
definitely
can't.
offer a lot of added value
Yeah,
for
we
the
do.
service.
We do. And when you're looking at like our monthly minimum, it's like the cost of a very inexpensive warehouse space in Denver at a shared location. Like it's a very reasonable monthly minimum. Yeah, I mean it's just being, like we talked about earlier, transparent. And if that I think would probably in one word answer that question for you
Yeah.
after the long-handed explanation. But
Great.
just the transparency piece is, and realizing from day one, like, we want to be your partner. There's a lot of brands that come in here that may not share information with us, and then it's like we get in trouble, right? Because,
Mhm.
oh, this was your goal. Oh, okay, you didn't share that with us. Like, I'm trying to look through my notes, right, my emails, and and that's not going to help anyone. So,
Right.
just that transparency piece, yeah.
That actually inspired another question. When you're finding a 3PL, is location to you or to your manufacturer? Is that important? I know as brands grow and mature, like they often want to start right around them, and I totally get that. But it is very common for, you're going to find that specialty co-packer.
Right.
We know some folks in Denver who are working with a Wisconsin
Yeah.
co-man, right? How do you know what location, or does that matter? Like, what do you need to think about as far as
Yeah,
location?
so I've helped brands that are kind of exploring, like, okay, I'm manufacturing myself and then I'm considering going to this part of the country for manufacturing. Like, can we do like a quick cost analysis on like what a truckload or an LTL would be back to Denver, right?
Right.
So that they could then factor that into like their modeling that you probably help them with, right? And so that's one piece. Another piece is, we obviously, I chose Denver because I live here, but it's helpful that we're like in the middle of the country. It really is. I've done a ton of work over the years looking at direct to consumer and LCL pricing from the coasts versus from the middle of the country. Where as a result, I mean, we get called. We're working with a few international brands now that literally just Googled us and we're like Denver 3PL or whatever if they did to Google us and find us and call us. And they're huge, and it's because they want to be in the middle of our country. They have logistics spaces in like every continent. These two brands that I'm thinking of in particular, and they chose Denver because they
Mhm.
have people on their team doing cost analysis and doing pricing. So what I tell small brands though is to kind of like think big picture and don't just choose Denver to choose Denver. If your primary, like, if you're on Shopify and you're running reports, if Shopify is your platform that you use for direct to consumer, if your primary user is like within like 3 states around Denver, like, keep it in Denver. I mean, your freight's going to be, your shipping costs are going to be cheap. You and I have both worked with a number of brands who have been founded here. They have a cult-like following here. Great, keep it here for now, and then let's explore. And then, we also work with a lot of brands who aren't based here, but they manufacture here. And
Right.
so, and they've done work where they're like, well, shoot, it's only $250 to get 2 truckloads into your warehouse. Whereas to ship it all the way back to the Southeast, to me, it would be 5 grand, to do that. And so that right there, adding that dollar figure to each unit, it makes sense for them. If they're a high volume, if they're moving through stuff, it makes sense for them to just keep their product where it's manufactured or really close by. Yeah, I think it's a hard question to answer because it really is like, again, I've said this like 3 times, but every single brand is so unique and has a different storyline.
Yeah.
And, the answers are not the same for every single brand. And I think that's what's so interesting about this business and like what I love the most about it.
Say that's why we love doing what we do because it's
Yeah,
never the same and
it's
it's
never
like
the
what
same.
are your goals and yeah, where are you going with this and big picture and but yeah, it is all of that modeling pieces. And so if you need support with that, I help people with that, you help people with
Yes.
that. It's like find the answers. Don't just make assumptions about it
Right.
and don't be scared to get out of your area because you might be surprised that there's
Right.
other options. Amazing. Well, anything else you want to make sure? Did I touch on all the main things we need to talk about when it comes to
Yeah. I mean,
freight
listen,
and
I could talk about
logistics?
logistics for hours. So to not be too boring to the listeners, I think, listen, I think just not being scared and, we're here to help. And like I said, I talk to brands all the time that I don't end up working with, but if I could provide some level of value, right? Like, hey, go check out this company for custom boxes, or hey, go, call this guy for local freight, or things like that. I love to help. So if I could provide any level of value to our community here and to your followers, which I'm one of, I love what you've done here, Sari, and I think it's lovely to have this community and to break down the walls. Let's not be scared. Let's do this
I love it.
together. So
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So thank you
Amazing.
for doing that.
Yes, I know. I love it. We're two women shaking this shaking
Yeah,
this industry up a little
totally.
bit. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. One of the things I love about the work that I get to do is that I get to make such amazing relationships and connections with awesome people throughout this industry. And Caitlin Wilson is another example of the people who are helping brands to succeed, like yourself, and that we all really want everybody to win, no matter your size and no matter what your path, your goals are. So, thank you so much to Caitlin. That was an incredible conversation. Do reach out. I will put all of her links below so you can find her and find Full Good Fulfillment and connect with them when you are ready, because finding a great fulfillment partner is so key as you scale your business. Until next time, have an amazing week. The smartest thing you can do as an entrepreneur is to invest in a who to help you with the how, to speed up your journey and help you skip the line. When you are ready for more support and accountability to finally get this thing done, you can work with me in two ways. Get me all to yourself with one-on-one business coaching, or join Food Business Success, which includes membership inside Fuel, our community of food business founders that includes monthly live group coaching calls and so much more. It's one of my favorite places to hang out, and I would love to see you there. Go to foodbizsuccess.com to start your journey towards your own food business success.